Hello, this is Craig from bizbox.co.uk. So this is part 2 of the Horticulous Slimux painting tutorial. In the first video you saw me paint Horticulous himself, and in this video we're going to paint his giant snail that he rides on. So sit back and enjoy. So here we have Horticulous Slimux's mount, his giant snail, and we're going to be painting everything on this miniature in this video. It's been given a primer of light grey primer from Vallejo, as I usually do with my miniatures. So if you want to paint this in the style that GW do, then follow the skin tutorial from part 1 of this series, and then you can go on Warhammer TV and find Duncan's tutorial for the shell, but we're going to paint this slightly different. So I'm going to take some Fenrisian grey for the skin, so we're going for like a bluey purpley skin tone for the skin, and we're going to do like a bone colour for the shell. So it's a bit hard to see on the camera as this is quite a light colour, sort of grey going on grey. It goes on quite easily. I thinned it out a little bit, but I still only end up applying just for a single coat here because it really applies very well and it goes on nice and smooth. So I'm just going around all these skin areas, and as you can see, and once it's dry, it's a nice sort of bluey grey. You see, I had a little stray bit of green stuff on the end there. I got rid of that, don't worry. So next we are going to wash these areas with some Drucci Violet. And I thinned out a little bit, but not too much, as you can see here. As always, I like to spread it around the miniature. So you don't want it too thick, you just want to give it just so it's like purple in the recesses, and it will slightly tint the surface purple as well, but we'll be neatening that up in the next step. And with that dry, as you can see, it's looking quite purple. So we're going to come back in now with our Fenrisian grey once again. This time we're going to do like a heavy dry brush, and that'll just bring all this grey back out for the skin. As you can see, I'm going on quite heavily there, but we're obviously avoiding the purple in the recesses. Now I'm just going to work my way around the skin. And that really brings the colour back up really nicely. So just continue to work around all these skin areas until you've built up the effect. And once that's dry, we can then add a further highlight to this using Pallid Witch Flesh. So I thinned this out a little bit, and we don't apply this too heavily, and we're just going to hit all the sort of sharper raised areas, so all the folds in the muscles, for example, just sort of going around the feet here. And there's quite a lot of these details, so just take your time and work your way around the miniature. So we're going to go around the mouth as well. And then once that is done, these skin areas are then complete, at least for now. So next we're going to focus on the shell, the teeth and the claws, and they're all going to be painted exactly the same way with some Zoundry dust. We're also painting these little horns at the front as well. I didn't point them out in the video, but they're also going to be painted in the exact same way as these areas. So we just apply, again, thin it down a little bit, but it should cover quite nicely with just one coat. But of course you can come back in with another coat if you want your colour to be more solid. But just make sure it gets into all the recesses. And then once that's dry, you can then start to add some shade to these areas. And we're going to take some Agrax Earth Shade, and we're also going to take some Seraphim Sepia, and we're going to mix these together about roughly 50-50. I just wanted to bring down the Agrax so it wasn't as strong, just give it that little sort of orangey colour to it. As you can see, it doesn't change it a great deal, but it's just enough just to make it slightly different, so it doesn't look as strong when it's applied to these areas. So just work your way around, careful that it doesn't pool up too much, and then we'll come in with a smaller brush for the teeth and the claws. And once that's dry out, you can see it really brings out all the detail. So we're going to come on with some Carrick Stone now, and we're going to dry brush this, just as we did previously with the skin. Just getting it all over these areas, just to give them a nice highlight, and it'll lighten these areas back up again. And as you can see here, it's really bringing out the details now. So we're going to now use a shabby bone, and again we're dry brushing here, and we're just going to be a bit lighter. As you can see, I'm applying this quite gently, and we're just going to catch all these raised areas and just give them a little bit of a highlight. I was going to leave it just for Carrick Stone step, but I thought they could all just benefit just from a little extra little highlight. When it comes to the claws and that, you may wish to layer this on, just as you did with the Pallid Witch flesh on the flesh areas. And with that, the shell is complete. So now we're going to do the wood areas. So we've got the tree on his back and the bit on the front, and these are all going to be base coated with some dryad bark. And same as before, it's thinned out a little bit, but as it's such a dark colour going onto this light undercoat, it should apply quite nicely with just one coat. But of course, if you feel you need to do it stronger, then of course come back in with another thin coat. And you notice that I've also painted the barrel this way as well. There's a few details what are sort of painted similar ways on this miniature that I don't always show in the video, but I will point them out as the video progresses. So we're now going to take some Gorefall Brown, and we're just going to apply this as a highlight. So we're going to hit all the sort of raised areas. So just take your time working around all these wood areas. I've thinned it down, of course, as I do with almost all my paints, especially when you're doing highlights. That way they look quite stark as they first go on, but as they dry, they look more subtle, and that gives you a much nicer, cleaner highlight. And you can see I'm putting on quite a lot for this highlight, as we will, I believe we do a further highlight afterwards. And once these areas are done, we're going to come in with some Baneblade Brown, and this is for our further highlight. So this one we're going to be a bit more selective with it, and we're just going to really pick out just the sharper points. You can see on the tree there, all these little sharp spikes and such. And anywhere else was sort of raised, we just run little lines of it, just going along. And the same with the wood at the front. So just take your time, as always, and just work around these little bits. So now we're going to do some red areas. So we have this cloth, and we have his tongue. There's the little plant thingy. We're going to do him red as well. So we're going to come in with Mephiston red as our base coat. Now with this, you will need to apply 2 thin coats. If you thin it down, as you can see, it's very thin where I'm using it there. Let me go in with tongue as well. You might want to switch to a bit smaller brush than I do. I think I do switch to a smaller brush when I come back to that, but just for a video I'm just showing you the areas that I'm painting in red. And that's giving us a nice smooth red area. And as I point out, yeah, I've also painted the mushrooms as well. So yeah, there's a few bits I don't show on video, but I do go back and point them out. So yeah, the mushrooms are being painted the same way as these as also. And we're now going to have Agrax Earthshade Wash, and I've thinned this down because we don't want it to be too dark, because it'll just make the red look darker than what we want. And this is being applied to all of these areas. That'll just give us a nice shade for the red. So now we can begin to highlight it using Evil Sun's Scarlet. So all these red areas are going to have this Evil Sun's Scarlet highlight, including the tongue. So you see, I'm sort of layering it on almost and leaving the darkest recesses, but still mainly picking out the higher edges on the cloth. So next up we add a further highlight of Troll Slayer Orange. This time we don't apply it to the tongue, but we do apply it to the cloth and the mushrooms and the almost like a singing plant. He looks like he's singing, but obviously he's not, but he does look like he's just burst out of that pot and he's sort of going for song. So just carefully add this highlight to all the raised sharper edges. Now apply very little to it on the plant, then for some reason I'm going back to the cloth, but once all these areas are done, we're then going to paint his gums, and we're going to start with Screamer Pink. So use a small brush here, obviously of course thin your paints down, so you've got good control over them. It's always handy when you're painting these very fine areas. You see even I managed to get a little bit on the tooth there, but I wipe that away. I do come back and neaten it up later on. So next up we're going to highlight this area with Pink Horror. So again, thin it down because we have to be even more careful this time. It is quite awkward doing these little areas on the camera, but we're just doing this as a highlight, so we're just running this along the edge of the gums. So next up we're going to paint all the metal areas. So we've got the chains, we've got some hooks on the stick at the front, and there's these little sort of canisters as well. I'm just going to paint them just metal also. So these are all being base coated with lead belcher. And I think I'm painting like the hook area here, but I don't manage to get it in shot, so that's a good bit of camera work there. But there's like a hook on the end of this thing holding the Nurgling up. It's also metal. And there's these little canisters and stuff on him as well. Oh, and also I'm painting the sort of pot that the singing plant is in as well. So next up we're going to shade these areas with Nuln Oil. So painting metal is pretty straightforward, just doing it this way. So you just start with your lead belcher, then you apply your Nuln Oil shade, and then the next step we'll be doing our highlight. And it really does help bring out the detail, especially in all these chains. So now we go on to the highlight step, and for that we're going to take some Runefang Steel. I thought Stormhost Silver would be a bit too bright for what we want here, so Runefang Steel is what we're going with. That just adds a nice little highlight. Again, we're just hitting all the raised areas. Almost just running it along the top of these chains. And on the canister, I'll just do a sort of a line down the side of it and across the bottom as well. So next up we're going to paint the Nurgling, and there's also like a head hanging on the back, so we're going to paint these in exactly the same way. Starting off with some Rakarth flesh. So of course you can paint your Nurgling however you wish, but I thought if I paint them the same way as the head, then that just helps speed up the video just a little bit. And I do paint some of my Nurglings this way, I have about 3 or 4 different sort of skin tones that I use for Nurglings on my Nurgling bases. And I sort of try and tie them all in within this Nurgle army. So once that's dry, we're going to shade it with a Reichland Flesh Shade. Again, for the Nurgling and for the hanging head on the back. And I thinned it down just a little bit. You can see it's probably a little bit too thin there when I first apply it. And that'll just help bring out all the detail in the flesh. So next up we're going to take Kislev Flesh, and this is going to be our highlight colour. And the same drill applies here, we're just hitting all the raised areas just with this Kislev Flesh to help bring out the detail just a little bit more. So I run along the top of the mouth, top of the head, and all the other little sort of pointy details. So next we're going to add a further highlight, because I didn't think that Kislev Flesh was just enough. So we're going to have just a very sharp highlight, just off his shafty bone. So just at the top of the eyes, his nose as well, and his chin. This is thinned out, so whilst it looks like it's going on a bit heavy, that will dry a lot lighter, so it just adds a nice little subtle sharp highlight to these skin areas. So the next step, we're going to paint all this sort of black, the black areas. So we've got some strapping around the Nurgling, we've got the hair of the hanging head. There's also the thing that holds all the barrels and the canisters up, and it's going to be black also. So as always, we take Abaddon black for our black areas. Now, be very careful as you go around this piece here, as it's very small. So just use a nice fine brush for that. Next up, we're going to add a highlight using Dark Reaper. So we just sort of follow the lines on these sort of straps or bandages or whatever they are, holding them on. Now, Dark Reaper adds a nice sort of subtle highlight. If you want to have a sharper highlight, then you could add a further highlight of Fenrisian Grey maybe. But on here I believe I just keep it at Dark Reaper. You could of course use Eshin Grey if you want a less of a blue highlight and more of a grey highlight. So next up we're going to paint the skull. We're going to do the horn and the teeth of the Nurgling and the plant as well. So we start with Celestia Grey. Now normally I don't paint my skulls in a sort of white scheme, but I thought I'll try it out. Because the shell's already like a bony colour, which is typically how I'd normally paint bones and stuff, so we thought we'd go for something different. Next up we're going to use Nuln Oil, so this is to wash the skull and around the teeth of the Nurgling as well. I tried a little bit too heavy there, so we just sort of suck some of that up on the brush. We sort of work it into the recesses, and then on the teeth, that just brings out the teeth quite nicely as well. So next up we can add a highlight to these areas, and I'm just going to come back in with the Pallid Witch Flesh. Now you could of course use white scar, but I want just a slight off-white for these. And I'm a big fan of Pallid Witch Flesh, I like using it for quite a lot of highlights. We're just going to hit the tip of the horn as well, sort of just run along that ridge. They're not really putting too much effort into that little horn. You might have a better way of painting the horns that you might prefer. I thought we'll just keep it simple for this one, and just carefully pick out all the teeth. So next we're going to paint all these like sores and spots and stuff. We're going to come in with some Screamer Pink. Now in hindsight I would have done these at the same time as we did for gums, because the first two steps are identical. So that was a bit of an oversight on my part, but we've thinned the Screamer Pink out, and you sort of want to glaze it around the sores. I also glaze it around some of the boils as well, and you want to paint the inside of these open wounds as well. You don't have to paint it around every single boil. I just paint it around sort of the larger ones. We also have them sort of round sort of spots on the back as well, and they all get painted in Screamer Pink, as you can see here. But it really is up to you. So we're going to highlight these areas with Pink Horror. And you can see like the boil on the front of his face, I've just gone around with a thinned out Screamer Pink as well. So that's sort of what I'm doing around the larger boils. And with the Pink Horror, we just highlight it as we normally do. Now I'm just hitting the raised areas, and these rings here, we'll just go around the actual ring part. That just brings out these areas just a little bit more. There's also these little sort of maggots on him. I decided to paint them in the same way also. So with the Screamer Pink and then the highlight of Pink Horror. So we're going to thin down some Blood for Blood God. We're going to sort of make it like a wash consistency, just with a bit of lambing medium. And we're going to wash it into these larger open areas. Just adds a bit of a gloss to them and a little bloody effect also. Just sort of paint it in the centre of these rings as well. You could even apply it to the gums if you so wish, but I didn't in this example. So next up we're going to paint all the boils and the eyes, and we're going to start off with some Avaland Sunset. So as always it's thinned out, as we just need to carefully apply it to all these little areas. So I apologise, we're just a little bit out of shot at times. Whilst I am enjoying the new setup that we have for filming these tutorials, it's still a little bit awkward, so I might have to play around with it a little bit. So we're going to take some Cassandora Yellow, and this is just to give us a little bit of depth around these eyes. See, the camera likes to focus in on the Nurgling. I think he wants to take centre stage in this video. And we apply a little bit to the boils as well. Just gives them a little bit more depth and gives them a nice sort of orangey little tint to them, which I think looks quite nice. As nice as a boil can look anyway. Especially add it to the ones that are in the trees, as they look sort of more orangey on the actual miniature from GW in their painted example. So that dry, we're going to just add a highlight with some Dawn Yellow. So you want to thin this out, and we just want to do a little spot highlight on all the boils. It's similar to how we painted them in step 1 of part 1 of this series as well. Now around the eye here, just want to do a little bit of a top. Now I just messed up a little bit there and just went a bit too much on the I hit like the rim around the eye, so just be careful not to do that. And you definitely want it thinned out when you do these pieces around the eyes, because then it will just give it a nice subtle colour rather than being too overpowering, as it's quite light in comparison. And again, at shot I'm just hitting these ones at the back. The camera just didn't want to focus that far. But in hindsight I should have just turned the model around when I painted them areas. Next up we just take some Abandoned Black and we just paint sort of a little line for the eyes. You don't have to be too neat here, just so you've just got like an sort of line going down for the eye. It sort of sells the effect quite easily. Okay, so next up we have these sort of green hexagonal areas. I'm also going to paint the mushrooms as well. There's a little tongue coming out of a pot. And there's also our little frog friend just hiding away in the tree, so don't forget about him. And these areas are all going to be painted with Caliban green. So again, similar to the first video when we painted these little sort of hexagonal sort of wounds, I don't know what they are. And we painted them on Slimux himself. And we thin it out because we want to get it in all these recessed areas. So thinning it out will help do that. Next we're going to come in with Moot Green as our highlight. I thought Moot Green was a nice light green to use. Also, yes, we paint the slime areas up here as well. I forgot to mention that. I'll show that on the video, but we're painting these slime areas in exactly the same way as well. And I thought the mushrooms would be quite good with this colour because they remind me a bit of the glowing mushrooms from Skyrim. So I was sort of painting them in like this glowing green effect. You could use Skarsnik's green, as I did in the first video for these areas on the snail, if you wanted to, but I thought we'll just keep with the Moot Green, as it looks quite nice. Also highlighting the frog. Now with the frog, you could paint his eyes as well with either White Scar or maybe Avalanche Sunset if you want them to be yellow. I did paint mine with White Scar just off camera. And lastly, we're going to take some Nurgle's Rot and we're just going to apply this to the slime areas. That'll just make them look a little bit different to the other green areas, and of course give them a nice sort of glossy, slimy finish. So I'm literally just applying it all over them. It's worth pointing out as well, the tongue of the singing plant was also painted in the same way I did the gums for the snail, but of course you can paint the tongue in any way that you so wish. And then here we have the final miniature. So this has been absolute great fun to paint. I love the miniature and I've loved painting it. It really is full of character, lots of different colours, and I've just based it how I've based the rest of my army. So he is standing on the rock, which I didn't show how to paint, but of course paint it in any way that will match the base of your army, or if you're doing a one-off miniature, you can just do however you wish to do the base. But yeah, such a brilliant miniature to paint. I've super glued him on to the snail. If you've got two painted parts, it's always best to use super glue rather than plastic glue, as they will stick a lot better. But yeah, I really hope you guys have enjoyed this video tutorial, at least half as much as I have enjoyed painting them. I'm really looking forward to getting my hands on some more of the Nurgle stuff to paint, because they are just really, really nice, and they are quite easy to paint. If you follow this tutorial along at home, I'm sure you'll have no trouble painting yours up as nice as I think I've done with mine. I'm really happy with the result, and I'm sure a lot of you guys can do even better. So yeah, thanks so much for watching. If you have enjoyed the video, then please do give it a thumbs up. You can also subscribe to our channel if you haven't done so already. We have a Patreon as well. So thanks for watching, and I'll see you all in the next video.